Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekly reading report. It's time for my weekly reading report, that fantastic program where I talk about all the stuff that I read during the previous week. I read some stuff, Roger. Not a ton of stuff, but I read some stuff. So let's talk about the stuff that I read last week. Okay. I will break out my list for the 500 book challenge. The challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones. The ever ongoing challenge. Where were we at? Okay, we were at book number 318. And that was the very first Lou Archer novel from Ross MacDonald, The Moving Target, which I have in this hardcover omnibus volume, and it was really, really good. So this is Archer in Hollywood. Has a couple other Lou Archer novels in it, but it's missing some in between The Moving Target and the next one, The Way Some People Die. The next book in the series is actually The Drowning Pool, and I am going to be reading all of the Lou Archer books. And I did read a lot of these years ago, but I don't think I've read all of them. And it's been a long time since I've read The Moving Target. I was probably in my 20s when I read The Moving Target, and that was a while ago. So yeah, The Moving Target by Ross MacDonald. This was really good. I was surprised by how good it was. It's sometimes overlooked, the first couple Lou Archer novels. And for example, when the Library of America recently reprinted a bunch of Lou Archer novels in two, I think, no, it was 3 volumes. They did 3 volumes of Lou Archer books by Ross MacDonald. They did not include The Moving Target. And it is true that in this book, perhaps Ross MacDonald hadn't really found his voice yet for this character, Lou Archer. The book kind of feels like a Raymond Chandler pastiche in a way. It's very Raymond Chandler-esque, this first book, where Lou Archer, a private detective who's recently divorced, he's not always thrilled about being a private detective, but being a private detective is what he knows. He used to be a police officer, but he was fired. He's an interesting character, and in this story, he is hired to find a missing rich guy. This rich guy is missing, and this rich guy's wife, who doesn't really care about the rich guy, clearly, and just married him for his money, she hires Archer to go find him because she wants to know if he's just off on a bender, which sometimes he just goes out and gets drunk for a little while and then shows back up, or if something else is going on. Perhaps it was foul play. Perhaps it was a kidnapping. And she's not real anxious to go to the police, because if she goes to the police, when he shows up, he'll just be really pissed about it. So she hires Archer to go and find this guy. And so he does. And it's a really, really excellent novel, which gets serious rather quickly. Fantastic characters. It's true that it doesn't really have the feel of some of the later Ross MacDonald Lou Archer novels. Like I said, this does feel very much like a Raymond Chandler book, as opposed to a Ross MacDonald book. But it's excellent, and it's really well written. And it's one of those books. I read it so long ago that I couldn't remember how things turned out. Like, what happened to this missing guy? I can't remember. I read it 20-something years ago. More than that. Quite a bit more than that. So I couldn't remember what happened to the rich guy. And so, yeah, it's great. You really, really want to find out what happens in this book. Very entertaining, and just a great writer, Ross MacDonald. And this isn't, like I said, this isn't even considered one of his better books. but it's excellent. So I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why this wasn't in the Library of America series. They could have made 4 volumes, really, and included this one and some other books that they left out. My dog is shaking. So, yeah, The Moving Target. It's fantastic. Great detective novel. I highly recommend it. I recommend all of the Lou Archer books. True, I haven't read the last couple of them. And I read that when he finally got to the last couple of them, which were in the 1970s, he was starting to suffer from Alzheimer's disease. So those books apparently are not the best. But I'm going to read them. We'll find out. But this one, excellent. So yeah, The Moving Target. It's fantastic. What did I read after that? Book number 319, which I just finished, is The Shadow. It's The Shadow. Double Z. So this is one of the Pyramid paperbacks that came out way back when. When was this published? Was it the 1970s or the 1960s? No, it was the 1970s. This was published in 1975. It was originally published in The Shadow magazine in 1932. And it's a really, really good Shadow novel. So The Shadow, the first of the great hero pulps. The Mysterious Shadow. Really, really good. So Double Z is a murderer. And he's a mysterious murderer. He sends notes to the police. And sometimes he gives them tip-offs on crime. And then he starts sending them notes saying, hey, this person's going to die. And then that person dies. So it becomes quite serious. Who is Double Z? Why is he doing what he's doing? Why is he killing all of these people? Usually they're criminals, but they're not always criminals. So what's going on? Who is Double Z anyway? And the police are wondering if maybe the Double Z is actually the Shadow. Is this another identity of the Shadow? Is the Shadow committing these crimes? Obviously not. But the Shadow, of course, does get involved in trying to find out who this mysterious killer is. And it's full of mystery and crime and some really cool action scenes. And a bunch of the Shadow's agents show up in this one. It's not just like Harry Vincent or like maybe one other. There are a few agents involved in this. And it's great. Lamont Cranston shows up, but he's not really Lamont Cranston. He's just the Shadow pretending to be Lamont Cranston. In the pulps, the Shadow really wasn't Lamont Cranston, unlike in the radio show. Lamont Cranston was just a rich guy that the Shadow would sometimes use his identity and disguise himself as Lamont Cranston. It's all very complicated. And the Shadow, of course, is a very mysterious figure. Very different reading this after reading so many spider novels. I've read a lot of spider novels, which are just over the top with their action and pulpy craziness. This is a lot more subdued than the spider. Not quite as much fun, but really, really good. So this is a really good Shadow novel. I had to read more of these. I don't know why I haven't read a Shadow novel in a while. I've got plenty of them. I've got a lot, actually. I don't have them all. Unlike Doc Savage. Doc Savage, I have every Doc Savage adventure. I do not have every Shadow adventure, unfortunately. But this one was excellent, and that is, of course, a great cover by Steranko. The great Steranko. He's great. He'll tell you so himself. He did an excellent cover here for Double Z. So, yeah, there you go. Probably next month I'll read another one of these Shadow books from Pyramid. I do have the entire Pyramid series. So there's that. I read that. I did read some other stuff. So let's talk about the other stuff that I read. One of the things I read was kind of interesting. We're going to get into some comic book stuff now. And I recently did a video about the Savage Sword of Conan. And I erroneously... It was a mistake on my part, Roger. I know, it's pretty rare that I make a mistake. But I made a mistake in that I said that John Buscema's final Conan story was probably the story that was in the last issue of Conan the Savage. Conan the Savage, a black and white magazine that showed up for 10 issues after The Savage Sword of Conan was canceled. And I thought the very last story in Conan the Savage was John Buscema's last Conan story. But when I make a mistake, somebody in the comments will let me know. And they said, no, it wasn't that one. It was from the last John Buscema Conan story that he did along with Roy Thomas, was a 3-issue miniseries that came out in 1999 called Death Covered in Gold. And I said, what the hell is that? I couldn't even remember this miniseries. But apparently that was John Buscema's last work in the Conan comic books. And so I thought, I have to have this, because if it's a Conan series from the 90s, I probably have it. So I searched for it, and yes, it exists. And I did buy it. And actually, I read it. I just forgot about it. Probably because, I read these 3 issues when they came out. And it was at a time when Marvel was putting out like a Conan miniseries here and there, but they would not commit to bringing back Conan the Barbarian as, an ongoing comic book. And I think they lost the license really soon after this, actually. So I bought it when it came out, I read it, and then I forgot all about it for however long it's been. 20-something years. And so this is a 3-issue miniseries written by Roy Thomas and illustrated by John Buscema. And it's good. It's not great as far as the story. The story is good by Roy Thomas. It's very entertaining. It's just not great. But the artwork, I'm happy to say, is really good. So Big John returns to Conan, and in the first issue, he's inked by, does he ink himself? Let me see. Oh, it looks like he inks himself in this. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So I think on all 3 issues, he inks himself. And it's actually, the artwork is really good. I think it's a big step up from what I saw in Conan the Savage in his last story there. So in this story, it begins as kind of a Western, in that Conan is hired by this gold miner to protect his claim so nobody jumps his claim. And, we start off with some great John Buscema Conan action before he goes to the gold mine. And it's really, really good as far as the art is concerned. And the story's not bad. It's okay. Mostly, like I say, it feels like a Western. Here's Conan fighting some bandits. The bandits play a pretty big part in this story, always causing trouble. And Conan has to defend this miner and his daughter from the bandits and help them at the mine. But of course, it is a Conan story, so you have to have something horrific in it. And so we do get horrific Lovecraftian monster, and also in some of the later stories, we get zombies as well as more fights with the bandits. And it's pretty solid. It's a pretty solid 3-issue miniseries. But like I said, this story, it's certainly nothing new if you had been reading Conan comic books forever, like I had. But the artwork is really good. Of course, when I read this, I did not realize that this was going to be the last John Buscema artwork in a Conan story. I probably wouldn't have forgotten the series if I had known that. But, nobody knew that. It just turned out that this was John Buscema's last Conan story in the comic books. He drew some Conan for for covers and stuff like that afterwards. But yeah, this is the last Conan story. But it's excellent. There he is fighting sluggy monsters and stuff like that. It's cool. So I'm glad that viewer reminded me of this. It did take some doing finding it. I had to search in the vault for a while, but I did find it. These 3 issues did exist. So yes, Conan, Death Covered in Gold. It's cool if you ever find these lying around somewhere. So I read those. I'm reading the Fantastic Four. This is the very last Fantastic Four Epic Collection. I've been reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which started in 1961 and ended in 1996 with the Heroes Reborn stupidity. And so these are the final issues of the first run of the Fantastic Four. And I haven't been able to read much of this because I've been so busy, but I'm going to spend the next couple days finishing this up. And the next issue I have to read is issue 407, where Reed Richards returns, finally. He's been missing from the comic book for like years at this point. So, going to be reading about Reed Richards' return. More awesome Paul Ryan artwork. I really liked these issues illustrated by Paul Ryan. So yeah, going to be finishing this off probably by tomorrow, and then starting Spider-Man, reading every issue of Spider-Man from the first run of Spider-Man, which lasted a long time, that first run of Spider-Man. So I'll be doing that today and tomorrow. I did get a couple things in the mail. Of course, Epic Collections and DC Finest's volumes are excluded from the 500 book challenge. And I did get a couple of those in the mail. I got Namor Submariner. This is the volume 5 in the Submariner Epic Collections. There's Submariner's costume that he had for a while in the 1970s. But this is particularly interesting because this has issue number 50, where we get the return of Bill Everett. Bill Everett returns to the Submariner, and I think he returns with this issue. He might have returned earlier, but definitely he is back on the Submariner in this story from 1972, and he does some more work with Submariner, which is awesome. I love Everett. He's great. Here he is fighting these crab creatures. So seeing him return to the Submariner is awesome. So that is a glorious return. And some excellent Submariner comics. He's not in this whole thing. He does a few issues of Submariner. But we also get, like, I think Don Heck is in here. Yeah. Don Heck does some Submariner stories in here as well. So this is a really cool volume to have. I'm glad to get this one. The Submariner Epic Collection. And then I got a DC Finest volume, which I was really happy to get because it's Superman. It's the Invisible Luthor. And this is more Golden Age Superman. Some more Golden Age Superman awesomeness. These are some good stories. These are stories from 1940 to 1941. So these are the Superman Golden Age stories that continue from the last Golden Age DC Finest volume. There have been 3 DC Finest volumes for Superman so far. 2 in the Golden Age and 1 from the 1970s. It'll be interesting to see what they come up with next for Superman in the DC Finest volumes. I think there's one that's coming, and it might be stories from the 1990s, but we'll see. I can't really remember off the top of my head. But this one's excellent to have. Another big fat volume, almost 600 pages from 1940 and 41. So yeah, it's Superman. It's great. Of course it is. So I got that in the mail. So what am I going to be reading next as just a regular book? So what am I going to be reading next? So I thought about it. You know, I have had some people sending me messages and emails saying, you know, it would be really cool if you started reading some more classics of literature. Like, you know, recently I did that my 100 favorite classics books. And it's been a while since I really, you know, read some great classics, and some people were discouraged by my last video where I talked about all the pulpy science fiction and pulp characters and westerns and stuff that I'm planning on reading this year. So I decided, okay, I'm going to read a genuine classic. Robert E. Howard. What? It's Robert E. Howard. It's Tales of Weird Menace. So this was recently published by the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press, and it has a mummy who looks suspiciously like a friend of mine. He doesn't look quite as bad as my pal Roger over here. But yes, Tales of Weird Menace. I've been wanting to read this one for a while. It is big. So, it's bigger than a lot of what I would normally read right now. This is 500 pages, so it'll take a minute to read this. But it's Robert E. Howard, And it's from the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press, and it has a bunch of cool Weird Menace stuff in it, including Skullface, which is a story I haven't read in a long time, and I'd like to give that another look so that I could talk about that on the Robert E. Howard Show. So yes, this week, Tales of Weird Menace by Robert E. Howard. I'll be reading this. Don't know if I'll have time to read anything else other than this week, but we'll see. We'll see what I can manage. Okay, I think that's everything for today. I will catch you next time.